Okay, guys, welcome back to the Let's Get Freaky podcast. I am so excited. I've got a fantastic guest for you today, guys. We have got Aleksander Czeszkiewicz with us today. How are you, sir? Welcome.
Thanks for having me on. I'm great and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Man, I've been so looking forward to this. Firstly, did I just pronounce your name correctly just then?
Don't worry, Czeszkiewicz, don't worry.
That's it. I'm terrible with names. People know this from the
Don't worry,
podcast.
don't
I
worry.
get my kids' names wrong, so it's something that is a problem that I have. But I have been so excited about talking to you today, man. You very kindly sent over your book just before Christmas. A perfect Christmas gift. There it is. Déjà Vu. Has everything already been? In search of previous lost civilizations. It's such a fascinating topic, and
Thank you.
I've started the book, and I'm absolutely loving it. It's one of my favorite topics, like ancient alternative history. It's something that I feel like I know a lot about, but in reality, I've just watched a lot of Ancient Aliens and listened to Joe Rogan podcast. That's about as far as my understanding is. So I've got a little bit of knowledge, but for someone like you that's really done the research and you've got these awesome books out, I'm so excited to have you here, man. So thank you very much.
Thank you too. Thank you. I'm really happy to hear that you've enjoyed my book,
I'm
really.
loving it, man. I'm absolutely loving it. So
Thank
you
you.
you are based in Poland, is that correct?
Yes, yes, yes.
Awesome, awesome, brother. And you wrote your first book when you were 17?
Yes,
Is
this
that
one
right?
it was wrote at 17. Then I
17.
yes, I'm 22, 23 right now. 23 actually, but in a few months. So by the year it's January, so I'm 23 right now.
That's
And
incredible.
I needed to wait a year because I couldn't publish it before I was 18, an adult. So I waited a year, but everyone can check in Polish. It was published when I was 18. So, if it was published while I was 18, I wrote it at 17. So
That's
it's all
incredible.
logical.
Wow. When I was 17, I couldn't even dress myself, let alone write this incredible book. Wow, man. I mean, that just makes it even more amazing, to be honest. The fact that you were so young and you've got this knowledge.
I translated it myself, I think, at 19 into English. This is my own translation.
Wow. That's
Right now, I'm
incredible.
translating in reverse, so from English to Polish, a book by my friend about Atlantis, but it will be like in a month or two, so I'm not, telling a lot about it.
Wow. So it's safe to say you're a pretty smart guy. I think it's safe to say. Polish, English, is there any other languages you can talk?
Oh, I've been learning a lot, but I've also, after like 5, 6, 7 years, don't remember much. For instance, I was learning German 8 years privately, so not like in classes, and I don't remember almost nothing, maybe some single words, but even simple sentences, I cannot do that. But I was also learning Sanskrit, for instance, ancient Sanskrit for a while, and I still remember a bit, but I was very proficient, maybe not in understanding because it's a very hard language, like grammar, pronunciation, etc. But I was learning, I knew I was very good at very quickly transcribing, the Sanskrit signs into like basic Latin alphabet. Right now I'm at the university in my bachelor degree and we are learning Latin. It's
Wow.
for me pretty easy, but this year I will be learning because of all my achievements, university actually decided to give me like personal schedule, and I will be because of that I will be also learning from this year on, like in a month or two, Hebrew, ancient Hebrew and ancient Greek. So plenty of languages. It's easy for me to learn languages, so I decided
Very
that it will be a
impressive.
cool expertise, and that it would really help with my own personal like interest and research. So I'm very
Yeah.
glad to have that.
Wow. I struggle with just English, to be honest. I still haven't fully got that yet. That's incredible, man. Wow. Incredible stuff, brother. So I'd like to go to the start of what got you into these subjects? Where did this all begin for you, man?
It began when I was a teenager, and I was attempting plenty of competitions. I was a good student. I was attempting competitions in English, in history. My mom was a history teacher back then, so I had plenty of resources. So I decided to get into a very huge, like, of the entire district here in Poland competition in history, especially because it was really hard back then to get into a good high school. So I thought, okay, I will win this contest and, I could do nothing. And I won, of course, and I was doing nothing in the middle high school. So it was very cool experience still, like on the personal level, but I was learning for such competitions. And when it comes to history, I needed to learn it from prehistory, like hominids, millions of years ago up until like 1990s or something, so entire history. And it was during when I was learning that from actually higher level, like high school, advanced high school, even academic levels of textbooks, I started questioning stuff. How do we know it is true? Basic stuff. How do we know that our history happened in this way? How do we know that the first civilization was ancient Sumer? And I was digging deeper and deeper. For instance, I was very interested in this question. I wanted very to answer these questions. So I started learning how actually history works, as a discipline, as an area of knowledge, how it evolved. And I was shocked that, right now it's basic knowledge of the mainstream. Oh, Sumerian civilization was the first, then let's say Egypt, India, and so forth and so forth. But actually, we discovered any kind of civilization of the Middle East, not only the Sumerian, because it's Akkadian civilization, Assyria, Babylon, etc., but it was only in the 1840s that we discovered anything, any kind of cities back there. And before that, we knew almost nothing. There were plenty of sources about that. Even the Bible mentioned plenty of cities in ancient Mesopotamia. Plenty of ancient historians were telling us that there were these huge civilizations in the area of Mesopotamia, but we knew nothing. And the official version, less than 200 years ago, it is 180 years ago, was that no, there was no civilization, it's just fairy tales. So I thought to myself, if less than 200 years ago we knew almost nothing about what is now common knowledge that Sumer was the first, let's say, what about other mentions of previous civilizations like Atlantis, Lemuria, and so on? So I said, okay, maybe right now we haven't discovered Atlantis yet, but maybe in 20, 50 years or something, we'll find out that our history is older. And even when it comes to the human species themselves, we were taking the roots of it so many times back by hundreds of thousands of years even. A few days ago, I was reading an academic book on prehistory of humanity from 2004, so 22 years ago. And in this book it was said, humanity as a species has its origins at about 50,000 years ago. Maximum 100. This is what this author said, like a very good academic one. This is what he said. But right now it's common knowledge that, even conservatively speaking, humans appeared 315 years ago. In my book from 5 years ago I have 200,000 years ago. But right now, from like last 2-3 years, it is established that the oldest anatomically modern human remains are from 350,000. And we are talking like 5,000 years ago, ancient Sumer, etc. So it's like 1% of our recorded history. And before that, we existed as anatomically modern humans, which mean with all of the capacities that we have right now. Of course, a little bit changed because we are even evolving right now. We see that evolution is going on. We are changing as species, but still hundreds of thousands of years. And even right now, anyone can go into Wikipedia, Britannica, and if they search human origins, it is even said that it's speculated academically, so still in conservative terms, it is speculated that anatomically modern humans diverged from the previous hominid species about 500,000 years ago. 500,000 years. And we are talking 5,000 years, which is 1%, right, of the history we know. So
Yeah.
I think just by such speculation, just by such thinking, what if not? I'm very convinced, and the more I learned right now at the university about ancient history, prehistory, the more I see that we can, and we are actually right now, I can talk about it a little bit later during this conversation, we are all the time taking the roots of both civilization and of humanity back by thousands of years, or even in the case of our species, hundreds of thousands of years back.
We're constantly finding more.
Yes.
And it's very strange because there's a very much a pushback in the mainstream for people like yourself that kind of dig deeper, and it's kind of seen as controversial, which I never understand, because what you're finding is truthful. We're finding real evidence that our timeline is very different. Why do you think there is a pushback in our history? Why do you think the gatekeepers or whoever you want to call them, why do you think they stop us from learning more? And why are the secrets? So that's what I've never understood. But there
Yeah.
definitely is, and there definitely is pushbacks.
Yeah, that's a good question. And right now, I've started studying at my university just a few months ago, and I was shocked because I also had this opinion that was based on what is going on in the media, in the internet. That oh, this kind of pseudoscience, this is some kind of hoax. You're idiots because you believe in Atlantis. You see such claims by authoritative figures like professors, some debunkers, academics. But I was shocked that I went into my university. And actually, lots of doctors, lots of professors were very open. They said, okay, it's speculative. Maybe they do not agree with everything, like with the catastrophism in the ancient times or something, but they didn't say it's total pseudoscience, etc. And, I should go, they will kick me or something. No, actually, people are extremely interested. And I even see from their classes about prehistory or ancient civilizations that they are showing that, okay, this is what is commonly accepted, but it's just an interpretation, for instance, of some kind of artifact, and it may be different. And I see plenty of professors like talking, okay, we think that this tool was used for that, but personally, I do not see this this correlation between that. So I think that it is in the media, it is on the internet, etc. But not all academics, even high-ranking academics, agree with this opinion. And maybe, as I said, because history as a science needs to be just, if you are, let's say, a car mechanic, you need to be careful if you are repairing someone's car. You cannot go, oh, I will do it like that because I do it in my car. It sometimes it works, it sometimes not. No, you need to be very careful. It's like a job. You need to, go be strict, use scientific method, use what is commonly accepted in, let's say, one journal in which you publish your articles, or you need to use this methodology and that. You need to be criticizing even if you don't agree, but you need to include your critique. It's like this. It's like, you need to do that as it's your job. But it doesn't mean that, oh, everything else is a pseudoscience. No, it's just one kind of, let's say, instructions manual that you need to, get this in your work. But it doesn't mean, actually, we learn about philosophy of science, methodologies when it comes to history especially, and you see that it evolved through times. It may, be obsolete in, let's say, 50, 100 years. New stuff may come out. So from my own experience, there are, of course, some people, even I know personally, that are very strong critics of such theories, but I see that it's not like very, very common and basic. Basically, every professor will tell you, oh, you're a stupid pseudoscience guy or something. So I think it's exaggerated in the media, and I think, people with such strong opinions, just as, politicians with the strongest opinions are, the biggest ones very often in the media, on the television, etc. I think the same with the history. Is just, their opinion, their like school of thought that they want, and it's good to have like one person who is on this side, another one who is on this side, because without that we would be close and we wouldn't find the truth. So this is my own experience.
Yeah, that is very true, man. And you guys, and what it's about is about having conversations where you come together with, that opinion and that opinion. You talk about it, and we kind of get resolved a little bit. We can kind of see the truth coming to the forefront. I think anyone with, like, even for someone like myself that's not the smartest dude in the world, even I can tell that the history that we are being told is clearly not true. I mean, you can even see in the last 100 years how the mainstream changed the history. We can see that with the internet today. We've got so much knowledge, so much information. And even last week's history can be kind of jumbled and kind of changed and manipulated, and you're hearing all different sides of the story, and we kind of have to put the pieces together, even from last week's news. So when you're looking back at 1,000, where we're picking up crumbs here and there, you can imagine how the history has been manipulated massively and changed. As they say, the winner of the time always, that's what is recorded.
Yes, I think because I'm in Poland and I was born in Poland and I've lived all my life in Poland, it also helps me to understand and to have a more open mind. And I very often with other like scholars from abroad talk about that here in Poland we experience, even right now I'm 23, and at least 2 or 3 times during my educational journey I've experienced changing of history depending on the political party that got to power. They weren't at, during my life, major changes because I was born after the communistic regime, because Poland was until 1989 under the communistic regime. But, even from my own experience in the modern world after 2000s, I experienced these changes. Or something was, for instance, something very important before was omitted totally from even higher, like advanced high school textbooks or something. So I've experienced that. And, I know older people, my parents, grandparents, and others who experienced even more, under the communistic regime. The West was bad, the East, like USSR had their own theories both about history and about everything, actually theories of everything, about struggle of classes and so forth. So I think that because of that, I have like a different mind, and it's easier for me, even it's easier for people here, even academics, to see that this is just a narrative, this is just an interpretation, this doesn't need to be truth. And that you very often, it's not good to be a very strong opponent that I will totally destroy all the other opinions and so forth, because everyone is learned by experience that you shouldn't do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. People get very tribal, right? In every aspect of the human world, people are very tribal, whether it's politics, or even down to your soccer teams, your football teams. People are so tribal about everything. So it's the same in history. What particular part of, and this might be difficult because there's a lot in our history, but what particular part of ancient history sort of grabbed you first and was like, oh man, that's amazing, and I need to look more into that? Is there a particular part?
I think that, I started, when it comes to my research altogether, it all started, of course, with the academic research. So I was learning all history, but the first things I've tried, if I was asking questions about the deepest parts of our history, I thought to myself, if we know so little about it, what about our ancient ancestors who are closer to these times? Like, even ancient Greeks, or what is in the ancient Sumerian epics. So I started digging like sources like Epic of Gilgamesh and so forth, and I think it was that, but I wouldn't say like just ancient Sumer, but also Egyptian sources, Plato's Atlantis famously, but also prehistory like Göbekli Tepe. It was back when I started, it was already in academic textbooks. It wasn't talked about a lot, but if I've just seen the image like megaliths 9600 years BC and older, so I think both such things as Göbekli Tepe and memories and ancestral narratives about our past were that kickstarted everything for me. And if they are telling us a complete different story about our history, for instance, that Sumer was not the first, that before that there were previous civilizations, there were cataclysms like the flood and so forth, I said, why are we thinking that all they're telling us are lies? And then, all the new stuff like Göbekli Tepe and others just, prove that there might be something more to our history. So I would say this was not like a single point, but again, like a full map of connections.
Absolutely. So we know that I think it's pretty much taken as it happened, the Great Flood. We kind of accept that happened now. Is that right? Like in every culture, every religion kind of accepts it. Would you say?
Yeah, it's like a motive very universal on the entire planet, but academically speaking, we don't accept that the flood occurred.
Really? They're still not accepting that?
No. It's not accepted that the flood occurred. And even, my interpretation of the flood, like the initial one, I have a few other speculations about the flood, was that, sinking of Atlantis was the same approximate date of the ending of the last ice age. Ending of the last ice age is academically accepted fact that, ice age was ending, ice caps were melting, so there were floodings all over the world, and from back then, 9600 BC and more, up until nowadays, the sea level rose 120 meters, so, it's like a skyscraper actually, and we are talking about, a few thousand years, like even 10,000 years, it isn't that long ago, so this is what I would say is the mainstream if we interpret it, and I prove in my book that very often this flood was connected to some kind of idea that there were huge things holding water, which were in the metaphors of some kind of frog, dragon, and then by something fiery, maybe some kind of comet or something hit into it, and these waters erupted from it, and I think it's a good metaphor, for instance, for, glaciers at the end of the last ice age, maybe a cataclysm or maybe even natural thing that melted the glaciers and then led to the global deluge. But when it comes to the academic thing, it's often said that it's just an over-interpretation, exaggeration of our ancient ancestors of local floodings, because floods are happening everywhere. Even, I don't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago, here in Poland there was a huge flood at the southern part of the Poland, where I am living right now, fortunately, but I've seen some images before and after the flood. And before the flood, you see, for instance, a road, a very new road with everything, some kind of small buildings, you see civilization, and then after that there is nothing, just, everywhere water, and everywhere, it was all gone in plenty of regions, all, small buildings with, very, even large roads were being destroyed completely, taken away with all of the flood waters. So I think that, even such floods could have been, even this thing that later was coined by the term Great Flood. But I think with my research, as I mentioned, that the Great Flood could have been the end of the last ice age. But also, when I see, for instance, ancient Indian sources, like even the famous Mahabharata, which is telling us that the Great Flood occurred during the night from 18th to 19th February 3102 BC, so they are very exact about this day. Then you see, for instance, ancient Sumerian sources telling us that flood was a few kings before Gilgamesh, and we know that Gilgamesh, according to the Sumerian kings list, was, I think, early 2000 BC, so I don't remember, 2700 or something like that, and a few kings before that, so similar timeline actually. So maybe there was a second event that was coined as a great deluge that destroyed probably many things, maybe plenty of cities and civilization, that was just before the first civilizations, because interestingly we are talking about in India and in Sumer about 3100 BC, and then we are talking, for instance, ancient Egypt unified during the same time, so maybe after the Great Flood. Even the Sumerian civilization was a bit older than that, like 4000 BC, 3500 BC, but again, bigger things were happening after this date for the flood, so maybe even such floods were coined by the Great Flood. And of course in my book I also provide with bigger evidence that it was much bigger than just local, even big floodings, but I don't know the truth. I do not claim that I know the ultimate truth. And last thing right now, even university staff offered me to write an article, and I started research. I will be writing soon this article on the flood connections, but of course peer review, academic, so I will be very critical there. But they said that these connections between flood stories in Mesopotamia, Bible, and India are amazing. Even from academic perspective, this is true. It's in text. Here Noah took 7 people onto the ark. There were 7 sages in the Mesopotamian legends. There were 7 rishis, again sages too, in ancient India. So this is actually the truth. So I will be writing soon, I think up until the end of February or something, and it will be published in a true scientific journal here in Poland, but maybe later translated into Polish, or I will just talk about it more in English. But also, interestingly, just to finish, this flood thought, what I found out because I started already this research, I will be soon finishing this article. I would say that, because we say, biblical version is so similar to, for instance, Mesopotamian tradition, and we think that, oh, biblical version is like great. Biblical version is so late. Even some scholars are thinking that it was written down, the biblical version of the flood, 300 BC approximately, 300.
Whoa.
And you are talking, the oldest Gilgamesh sources are from about, I don't know, 1800s, 2300 BC, something like that, and even older than that, because it's just that the texts from Gilgamesh, which are telling us this exactly the same story, it's like almost a plagiarism from the Gilgamesh and later Atrahasis in the Bible. So I just want to, clarify for everyone, because I also probably made in the past such mistake. Oh, compared, you see, the biblical version is almost the same as Mesopotamian. Actually, I will be researching that this year probably, but it may take, of course, longer. I think that lots of the Old Testament, it's copied from
It's a lot
not
older.
only Sumerian sources, later Akkadian, even Persian ones, Babylonian ones. So it's not novelty, it's not like a holy book or something. In this case, when it comes to historical and ideas, it's all taken and, put together this, that, and even what I found out recently, but I need to double check everything, is that some true academic scholars are thinking that even the name Noah from the ark is taken from Mesopotamia, because one of the epithets, so like things that describe Atrahasis, so the Akkadian between Gilgamesh and Bible was Atrahasis myth, I think also 1800s BC, so about 2000 years BC, and in Atrahasis there are some things that describe this person, this flood story hero Atrahasis, and one of the epithets is almost the same as Noah, so they even, they were copying these old stories, the biblical writers, and they even, were not imagining, they even were, I don't know, stupid, like maybe not stupid is a bad word, but they were not like enough knowledgeable to see that it's not like the name, it's just an epithet, and in another language it means something. I don't remember, it's like, for instance, epithets are like Atrahasis the strong one, or the first one, or something. So they took such epithet which is similar to Noah, and they use it as the name for the main person. So it goes much more beyond that. I'm researching it right now, but I have like for these claims everything, even in academic sources, so it isn't like some conspiracy theory, but the biblical version, you may say it's a plagiarism or a very, very, 70-80% copied from much older sources. And it goes back actually to the Sumerian Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest known texts in the world, because even in Gilgamesh it was very fun reading the flood, because Gilgamesh, it's not about the flood, it's like a different story, but there is a mention which is very important about the great flood, and it even said that, not Gilgamesh, but Yushudra is the Noah of the Epic of Gilgamesh, right? And there is this flood, the ark is built, they are waiting until the flood ends, and just as in the Bible, Noah is taking, I don't remember which exact species of bird, but sending one bird, it goes back to him, so it means to Noah that this bird didn't find any place to actually stay, you know what I mean? So he couldn't stay, so he went back to the ark because everywhere there were waters. And then after some days he sends another bird, and this bird is not returning to Noah. So it means that he found some place, safe place. So it means that the flood is ending because, the waters are going down and some places are above water. And the same is in Gilgamesh, that Yushudra is sending one bird, it's coming back, another one, and finally, so even details. As I mentioned, people taken onto the ark, not many people are interested in such topics, and I was having a presentation a few months ago at the university about that, and doctors and professors were, wow, they haven't, they were reading, okay, they knew about this Gilgamesh, that it's very similar, but they didn't know even the number of people taken onto the ark, because it was not only Noah and, the animals, but his family. It's 7 people apart from Noah, so the main hero plus 7. So wife of Noah, 3 sons of Noah, and 3 wives of Noah's sons. So 7 people with Noah. In India, about 600 BC, still before the biblical version, Shatapata Brahmana, there is Manu with 7 sages, 7 rishis. There are these Sumerian, plenty of different versions. In some of them, there are 7 sages, 7 Apkallu, who are also bringing civilization after the flood. So still, we may say another connection, because in the Bible, okay, it's restart of some kind of civilization, but we are not being told that, oh, it's a huge Atlantis or something. No, just that it all started again. But here in India, here in Mesopotamia, we find sources that are telling us that these Apkallus, after the Great Flood, started civilization. They even found some primitive humans, like in case of the Osiris in Egypt. In this version, that Osiris was traveling, he found primitive humans, and he taught them basic stuff about agriculture and so on. So it comes much deeper than that. Just to clarify that the biblical version isn't like this great one or something, but just a copy of older ones.
Wow. So that story is possibly passed down for hundreds, thousands of years and just told again. It's
yes, exactly. Even when it comes to ancient Mesopotamia, because we are talking, it's a long story from, let's say, 4000 BC, 3500 BC, first Sumerians, then Akkadians, Assyrians, Babylonians, and they were changing, different cultures were living there. And you see that, for instance, some of the oldest Gilgamesh epic that we have found sources, like from 2000 and more BC, you compare that to the sources from 800 BC, from the Assyrian period, or even later than that, they are very similar. There may have been some changes, and even in some cities they were giving different names. That's why, it is now commonly known it's Utnapishtim, Jushudra, Atrahasis. These are all the same people, and we see that these are the same stories, but even more than 1,000 years, even in the Mesopotamia itself, not beyond like in the Bible or in India, you see that there is this, continuity in this flat story. So it's really amazing when you research that.
Man, it is. Yeah, absolutely. Do you think it's possible that the world back then, like the first accounts that we have of the flood, do you think the world was a lot more connected than we think it was?
My own personal theory about even deeper prehistory before the Sumerians and so forth is that there lived some kind of people who went and traveled through the entire world, and I show that with anomalous maps that are showing us some pre-flood, so pre-end of the last ice age features, like some land bridges that are not existing because of this mentioned 120-meter sea level rise. There are megalithic connections all around the world. So this is my theory, and I don't have like plenty of evidence. I'm still researching that. But again, when we are talking about this flood story and recent antiquity, 1000 BC, 600 BC, 2000 BC, and even I was talking with some people about that at the university. I think that and I think I will explore a possibility of that in my article in the journal, that there was some kind of connection, because it's beyond just similarity, that similar people taken onto the ark, similar motives, because you have too many of them. I accept, okay, 2 synchronicities, 2 coincidences, but if you're looking at the details, and the details are the same, and that could be, when it comes to academic perspective, could be revolutionary, that there was some kind of connection before 600 BC, before maybe 1000 BC, even when it comes to this flood story. So I think that we find more and more evidence between that, just as, in the past we thought Columbus was the first to reach the Americas, then even right now, academically speaking, it is some kind conservative to say, Vikings were before him, and maybe even, but this is not like conservative, maybe even Romans before that. And I would say that even if you read Plato's dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, in which he talks about Atlantis, he talks about Americas in these dialogues too. So maybe this knowledge was already ancient, maybe it comes from ancient Egypt, because Plato is telling us that this knowledge was, went from Egypt to Solon, from Solon to Plato, and so forth. So I believe that it's much older, but we are still finding evidence. I'm open for such possibility. I'm open for that. Okay, it's just a coincidence. I'm still researching. It's the problem that, if we mentioned the skeptics who are telling us, it's impossible, it's pseudoscience, that these are parts of our history that we do not have plenty of either material evidence like archaeological excavations, and even when it comes to the textual evidence, with one Atlantis in Plato's dialogues, another source maybe in another historian, but it's so scarce that there is plenty of possibilities, and I think that we shouldn't limit ourselves, even when it comes to people who are, in the academic part of, the research, that even they should consider more and more possibilities, even if they are, not proven right now.
I'm going to go down the conspiracy route right now.
Yeah.
But let's go. But some say in the US right now, there's an area of the Grand Canyon which nobody's allowed to go to. Me and you are not allowed to go there. Nobody's allowed to go there, apparently. And that there's possible Egyptian artifacts in America right now. I know that's seen as quite controversial, but what's your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think that's possible?
Yeah, I think that's possible, but actually, I haven't researched it that heavily like the flood or other stuff, but it was because I didn't find like true evidence, not fabricated, that it was the case. There are just legends, there are myths, there are a little bit like very scarce evidence of that. There is like this conspiracy, why it is closed, why they are not proving, okay, there is nothing there. The same with the Smithsonian cover-up of this giant skeletons or something.
Yes.
So I think it's very similar stuff that, it's possible, very possible actually, but I think that I would need, some more like footage, some true artifacts from there, because in America there are plenty of artifacts from robberies. They robbed the Middle East during excavations, Egypt, even, in Egypt, the Egyptians were selling stuff found, not legally excavated and so forth. So, just because in the nearby region you found some Egyptian artifact doesn't mean that it was from this site in the Grand Canyon. It could be, taken from far away. So I need more things that not just accounts of people and not just stuff like that. But I think it's very, very possible.
TikTok and Instagram.
Yes.
That's
And
where I get
even
most
now
of
the
my
AI,
information.
so it's very dangerous, to believe in it.
Absolutely. Is that the argument for? Because I'm pretty sure there's Viking artifacts and Roman artifacts found in the US as well. Is that the argument that it could have been brought over?
Yes.
Buried,
yes.
and they found it and think
Yes. I haven't again researched it that heavily, but I've heard that it's one argument. Another argument is that it is fabricated, but very well, because we cannot date very well things such as stones, so you can actually remake such artifact. But there is another argument that, I don't know, some other people brought it, maybe after even Rome, or maybe through Roman times, just basically. But I think that the Roman one is even like better than the Grand Canyon Egyptians. I think there's more evidence because we have this artifact, and I haven't researched, maybe it was totally debunked that it's fake, but I think that not yet.
Interesting. All we know with the Grand Canyon is that there are certain areas that we're not allowed to go to, which I find strange as well. That the fact that there's places on this planet that me and you can't just go to without permission from whoever.
I think they say it's because of the natural formations. It's dangerous, to preserve this Grand Canyon and so forth. This is the explanation.
Maybe that's right. But we don't trust them. Going back to the flood, isn't there's a part in, and I get the names wrong, I don't know the name of the place, but isn't there a part where they believe they found the Ark of Noah? Is that?
Yes, there are a few claims. There have been a few claims over the recent few decades, but again, I've researched some of them because I'm very interested. Even there are, claims that there is like half of the ark still there intact, but actually in archaeological records, official one, there is nothing. There is also like no cover-up that you cannot go there and find. Even in Poland there is one, but it's a priest, and plenty of historians are very criticizing his work, and he's telling that he twice saw the ark. He's showing like some interior design which is similar to some kind of ship, like it's all wooden stuff, etc. But if it was true, he would actually show, okay, this is the interior, but this is the exterior. And no, I cannot show because it's dangerous or something,
Yeah.
really. So I'm very skeptical about that, but I think that maybe we could find some ark. And actually, when it comes to ark, because, according to the Bible, but it's also not like 100% true. It was Mount Ararat, on which or near which the ark was after the flood placed, but it's not, there are plenty of regions that could also be this mount. It's not 100% case that this is the Ararat, but in the Sumerian and other Mesopotamian sources, it's similar ranges of mountains according to which the ark was, after the flood placed. And it's also very interesting, again, if I was talking in my book, I, was into this narrative mostly that the Great Flood is most probably the ending of the last ice age, and after that, there was this Neolithic revolution, so agriculture started, first settlements, and so forth. And interestingly, very recently, I was learning about this Neolithic revolution very heavily, and Neolithic revolution didn't start on the lowlands, like in the ancient Sumer, between the twin rivers in Mesopotamia. No, it started nearby this Mount Ararat, nearby Zagros Mountains, on the highlands. And this said because this was how, how different species of plants were there. It was easier, it was very abundant there. Yes, it's true, we know, we have some evidence for that plenty actually, that plants were very abundant there, so people were abundant, they didn't need to hunt so much, so they started being sedentary and so forth. But it's another coincidence that, the same thing after the flood, like the first settlements, new civilization, not civilization, but, first cultures, sedentary lifestyle started actually in the same region that the ark, according to plenty of sources, was to be located. So it's another pretty conspiracy theory and coincidence.
Yeah.
That it all started there nearby these arcs. And it went lower into the Mesopotamia proper when ancient Sumer and other flourished.
The more you look into this kind of stuff, the more the word coincidence just goes, because you're like, there's too many, man, and you can't. People say, oh, it's coincidence. Yeah, it's very strange, but it's coincidence. It just can't be, man. There's just too many. It's interesting stuff. I've got to ask you. You mentioned giants. You're on Let's Get Freaky. So it's one of my favorite topics as well. What are your thoughts on the giant bones that are found in North America? I mean, there's been so many accounts of giant bones that were found in North America alone that are they're reported in the local papers at the time, pictures, and then they seemingly disappear. They're taken. Whoever takes them, I don't know. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think coexistence of anatomically modern humans, so us with giants, is completely possible from what we know about prehistory, ancient history, because you see, at some point during our prehistory, I don't remember exactly, 100,000 years ago, or 80, 50 or something, we as humans in the modern present form coexisted on the planet Earth with at least 5 other species of hominids. 5 other different, and they were completely different. For instance, one of them was maybe not a giant, but a hobbit of 1 meter tall beings, the Homo florescensis on the island of Flores found. They were living like hobbits in caves, similar to from the, of course, the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings. So it's also very interesting conspiracy theory there. But we coexisted with 5 other species of hominids, and it's just 50, 70, 80 years ago we thought that, for instance, we were after the Neanderthals, that Neanderthals were our ancestors, but right now we know that Neanderthals were parallel species to us. And right now we are living, maybe not, but for 90%, or at least in the media, we are living as the only advanced hominid species on Earth, and only monkeys, etc. But maybe I even think of, giants, but also Bigfoot, Yeti, all over the world.
Let's go.
That, if we coexisted, let's say 50 or 80,000 years ago with 5 other species of hominids, maybe right now some hominids still exist. Or maybe, let's say, a few hundred years ago they still existed. Or maybe 1,000 years ago. And you see throughout the recorded history plenty of mentions of such. Even we were talking about the Epic of Gilgamesh. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, there is this man called Enkidu, who is clearly not a human being, but he can live with humans. He's very strong. He's very animalistic. It's like it's said that it's a human with all the hair on him. He's stronger than humans. He's stronger or as strong as the strongest humans alive back there, and he's very primitive, not intelligent, but he still can live within the human society, so he's very close. He may be some kind of Neanderthal or something too. So this is the ancient sources from just a few thousand years ago. You see, for instance, the famous Mongols who conquered even, parts of Europe, and the biggest one of the biggest empires in the world. You see that they are talking about that when they went from Mongolia through, I would say, Central Asia, they've encountered such, different species like primitive humans that were very hairy. So again, maybe also some kind like just like Neanderthals, Homo denisovans, Florescensis or something. And I think the same with giants, even as recent as I think 1500s, 1600s, Ferdinand Magellan, great explorer, found in in South America. He has accounts that he found people very, very tall, like giants. And the same, you see similar patterns to these stories, because, if it was imagination, each people and each society would imagine them differently or have similar characteristics but differently. But you see, for instance, giants in the ancient Greek sources, they are very often different than humans, bigger, more primitive. They are alone, so living in some kinds of caves, and I think that this may be like these mentions can be mentions of other hominid species. Maybe these giants were some kind of hominids, maybe Yeti, Bigfoot or something is such a hominid still. Maybe there are also theories, I think there are very good theories about this being non-physical entities to some extent, but I think that it is very probable that few thousand years ago there existed some kind still of other hominids, maybe the last one, and these are the giants, these are the Yetis, these are the Bigfoot, these are the Cyclops, maybe just one had one eye because the other one, he lost the other one. So I think there is plenty of possibility, even if we speculate, but from the known grounds, from the scientific grounds, because it's a fact that we coexisted with so many hominids. They existed, they were smaller, they were hairy, etc.
Absolutely, man. And we know that Bigfoot alone appears in every culture all around the world for hundreds and hundreds of years. We can go back, might not call it a Bigfoot, they don't say Bigfoot, but there's different names for these things. But they're the same thing. They're describing the same thing in every culture.
It might be even a memory from, let's say, 10,000 BC, maybe back then. Because, Neanderthals, I think 20, 30,000 BC, they were gone, or let's say 50, something like that. But not that long ago, actually, if you see Göbekli Tepe, 12,000 years ago. So maybe 15, maybe 10, maybe 5,000 years BC, there were such species, and that's a memory that, was given orally transmitted through different generations.
Interesting, man. A little side note: do you get Bigfoot sightings in Poland now? I know we're going off topic.
And I think that here in Poland there isn't. Actually, in this region, it's not a huge region, but in other parts of Europe, it is a case that something like Bigfoot is in the legend. But here we do not have something like, it's not, maybe in smaller cultures, it's not like a strong legend about that. So no. But I think in the East, like near Russia, Ukraine, etc., there are something like going near, the sites even of the Central Asia, like on this side there are for sure myths and legends about that.
Interesting, man. Do you have any other myths and legends that are similar, or werewolves, anything like that?
Probably more like some kind of fairies, elves, like the Germanic legends, some kind of werewolves.
Yeah.
Vampires maybe, but such legends.
Again, that's in every culture. Again, different names. Fairies are called different things in different cultures, but they're the same thing. They're describing the same thing. Interesting stuff, man. I want to get into Egypt with you. Because I think Egypt, for most people, when you think of this topic, most people go Egypt, because it's still so prevalent in our world today. We can still see a lot of the remains today, and we're still learning more about the remains today. Even I don't know too much about them, but the pillars that have been found recently under one of the pyramids that like go 2 meters down, 2 miles down, or whatever it is, we're still learning about this topic, and it's still in front of us. What are your thoughts on ancient Egypt, and is that a big That must be a big point for you as well.
You know, even in the Plato's story of Atlantis, it is mentioned that the Atlantean Empire had its influences over Italy, for instance, over large parts of the Mediterranean Sea, but also in Egypt, that Egypt was just a one colony. So this conspiracy, let's say for now, theories about, Egypt connection with lost civilization or something isn't like completely random and fairy tale invented. No, it's based on ancient sources, and I think that Egypt is very enigmatic. I think that it's mostly because how huge, like the pyramids and plenty of other sculptures of different pharaohs and also some particular pillars, how huge it is. And I think that plenty of things in Egypt are still not discovered. And even, Zahi Hawass, the famous gatekeeper in ancient Egypt, he is telling us, and it is quote from his book, that I think he believes, as a very conservative, one of the most conservative ones there, that still 70% of ancient Egypt, so he's talking only about dynastic pharaonic Egypt, not like some Atlantis or something, still 70% of it is not excavated, still not discovered under the sand. He just, calculated it, just approximated, of course, from all the discoveries that are being made in Egypt. So still 70% of the pharaonic times known to us is still under the sands. I've been learning recently a lot about, the academic side of ancient Egypt, and even recently, I think in the 80s, 90s, and up until early 2000s, there was, a huge debate about even timing of the ancient Egyptian civilization. And very recently in academic circles there was debate if there isn't a 200 years about, or even a little bit more or less, plus minus 200 years of fake history in ancient Egypt. And it was within the academic cycles, because right now we can say about, this theory about, from medieval times, 400 years was not there, but this is let's say, conspiracy theory. But even recently in academic circles, there was debate if maybe this 200 years of Egypt didn't even exist. So the same with actually when it started, because it was first that 3000 BC more or less, etc. But we are finding more and more earlier artifacts suggesting that Egypt was the much long before. And I think that all the theories, alternative theories, not academic, about Sphinx being much older, pyramids being much older, if we are finding more and more evidence that it is more and more old, maybe in the near future we will completely change. So Egypt is a huge enigma. The same with, we are talking about Egypt, but we talked about ancient Sumer. I've last year, like a few months ago, heard that at the Sumerian city of Ur, right now there are excavations at 22 meters below ground. 22 meters excavations, and we know, basically we are dating because there are some artifacts with some names of kings, etc., that at 22 meters, it's about 2300 BC. So imagine Atlantis or something, let's say 10,000 years ago, how deep it would be. Maybe 120 meters just as the sea level rise or something like that. So I think the same with Egypt. Again, this is, not academically accepted, these theories about there's something under the pyramid, but there are sources that there were entire cities, famous labyrinths in Egypt that were underground, that were huge, and, not a lot is actually discovered there. And even when it comes to academic sources about underground Egypt, we have a few shafts that go a few stories underground, I think 2 or 3 stories underground, the Giza Plateau on which the 3 famous pyramids are located, that are, and they are incredible because you see, it's a, cut in the rock shaft that goes straight down, like straight down. Then you see one condemnation. On this condemnation you have some kind of different sarcophagi or maybe boxes from granite, so they needed to put them there. And then you see another, straight down, and another one that is flooded with water. So it's not like a conspiracy theory or something, it's true academic knowledge that it exists. Even these shafts that I mentioned were found by Zahi Hawass himself. He was describing them, he even was pumping out the water, but I think he didn't pump out the entire water, but it's just mainstream knowledge. So if there are, I don't know how many meters, 30, 20 something, maybe 40 meters deep shaft, So maybe under the pyramid there are also more shafts than we've experienced up until nowadays. So I think it's very open to that. The same, with the Egyptian sources. There are plenty of Egypt is very nice when it comes to this alternative research because it shows consistency with the sources about chronologies of different rulers. And there are plenty of, these are called lists of kings, just as the famous, probably plenty of our listeners heard of the Sumerians list of kings. Similar are in Egypt, and they are showing us from about 36,000 BC plus minus. So again, ancient Egypt, according to Egyptology, started about 3100 BC, 3000 BC about, and here 10 times older than that and more, 30 something thousand years BC. And these lists are showing us that first there were some gods, demigods ruling Egypt, and then there was this famous pharaoh Narmer-Menes, who was the first one, and then the entire chronology is about 70% true within different lists of kings from different periods, some of which are even thousands of years apart, and they are still commemorating in 70% similar lineage of rulers. This, what we know, pharaonic chronological rulers from this 3000 BC onwards. But what if they are also true about these previous rulers before Narmer-Menes, like 10,000 BC, 8,000 BC? And I also think it's very important in Atlantis studies because the Greeks didn't have such long history. They didn't believe in such a long history of their nation, and even in the famous Platonic dialogues Timaeus and Critias about Atlantis, it's that the great law reformer Solon, sage, went to Egypt, was traveling to Egypt, and the Egyptian city of Sais, he found some kind of priests who were telling him, oh, you Greeks are like children because you do not have that old history, and we Egyptians have, like, and he's saying 9,000 years before their interaction, 600 BC approximately, he's telling about this Atlantis story. And I think that it's the best evidence that there was a tradition, and it's a common fact in plenty of other sources, of a much older Egypt. Egyptians believed in that. So I think the Platonic Atlantis also was at least partial, even if we are extremely skeptical about Plato's Atlantis, let's suppose for a moment, we see similarities that most probably it has at least some roots in Egypt of this story. So it's very important, and who knows, maybe they were recording such a long periods of time, maybe these periods are very true. So I think there is still huge potential in ancient Egyptian civilization, but I think everywhere on earth, because as I mentioned, we found the Mesopotamian civilizations less than 200 years ago. Egypt also was found just, I think, 50, 70, 80 years before that. We thought like 300, 400 years ago that Greece and Rome were the first. Then we took the civilization back to Egypt, then ancient Mesopotamia. So maybe we'll take the civilization back to Atlantis in the next 20 years. Who knows?
Man, it's so exciting. It's so exciting. I don't know how anyone can't be fascinated by this.
Yeah.
Because it's ultimately who we all are. We just want to know. We just want the answers, whatever they may be. Whatever we may find, I think we need to know. And I think it's very important that people like yourself are doing the hard work. Your knowledge is incredible, brother.
Thank you.
It's absolutely fascinating. Do you think we'll ever get all the answers? I know that's a difficult question, but it's a. Do you think it'll ever happen?
It's a philosophic one, and I think that within current paradigm of not only how history but also how science works, we couldn't find the ultimate answers, because this is again philosophic, what is science? There is no single definition of science, but in order for something to be science and not pseudoscience and hoax and charlatanism, it needs at least two of the brackets to be accepted. So science needs to be based on naturalism, similar to materialism. Naturalism means that everything that we can experience in the natural world needs to have natural causes of it. So, to be like very quickly, it's about that there is nothing supernatural. So science actually is not having this anything that is even, let's assume that supernatural exists. It's beyond the domain of science. This is a huge problem, because if something like psychic abilities, etc. exists, it's right now beyond the domain of application of science. But another one is rationalism, that everything needs to be based on rationalism, so we, by logical thinking, can, get the truth. But what if something is irrational? And I think of this as being just an evolutionary thing, like logical thinking, because we evolved, let's say from apes, etc. And we see that other animals are thinking more emotionally, like more evolutionarily to survive. We are also thinking like that, but we have this rationalism, we can think critically, etc. But what if it's not the ability to discover the entire universe, but only like another step in the evolution? Let's give these stupid humans just something more than other animals, but it won't be about understanding the truth. It will be another survival key, but on an advanced level, another level, but not the ultimate level. And I think that this is a huge bottleneck of science, both of these, because, and again, people, very critics of, such things that we are talking about, say, oh, you're a pseudoscientist, you're a hoax, or psychic abilities do not exist, spirituality is a hoax, etc. They cannot say that from the scientific perspective, because science is not applicable to supernatural right now, or to irrational, or to something beyond, like God, religion. This is not the area of application. Science is like, I often say that a cool explanation based on that could be that science is a tool of rational understanding of the natural world, or material world, you can say. But it's only a tool, just as maybe, let's say I'm a mechanic and I want to, help someone's body, but I do not have any knowledge in biology. Some parts may be applicable from mechanics to, human bodies, but I would say, no, this tissue do not exist, or such chemical processes, they do not exist, etc. No, it would be stupid. So the same, science is just, applicable to the natural world and to the rational part of it. So that's the best explanation. That's why I think within this model we cannot find the ultimate truth. The ultimate truth can be found within such a paradigm, so such something, model of thinking that would say, okay, I don't know, maybe one assumption that things exist, because if they doesn't, it's stupid to even search for the truth. So would say, okay, I will only assume that things exist and I will go for the truth, and then we can find the ultimate truth, not by limiting ourselves, getting into this bubble, into this cage. Only material or natural things exist, only everything should be rational, etc.
Absolutely, that's a great point, man. I think this world is a lot more supernatural and magical than your average person thinks it is, to be honest. I think there's a lot more going on. And as you say, until the mainstream or whoever they are opens up to the big picture and the possibilities are endless. And it's so exciting, man. It's so interesting. And we're definitely, I think, as technology grows, we're going to learn a lot more, and we're going to learn a lot quicker as well, which is another very exciting point, Fascinating stuff, man. Brother, I have absolutely loved talking to you. I'm so excited to finish the book. It has been absolutely amazing. I hope this is the first of many conversations. I really do.
Sure. Let's go in the future. We can think of some topics that we haven't covered, maybe. Or you have some questions, want to know more about particular stuff like this and that. You can let me know.
Awesome, brother. Well, let's do it again soon. I've got to ask you though, before we wrap this up, you're on Let's Get Freaky podcast, and I ask everyone this: have you personally had any paranormal experiences?
Yes. Oh, this is a long story. Part of my research, when I started, some people would say spiritual awakening or something from some sorts, because until then I would say atheist, maybe agnostic, that maybe something supernatural exists, maybe not, but more on the atheistic side. And I started having so many synchronicities, prophetic dreams, but in a sense of not being very important, but stupid things that then happened, and it was impossible for it to be just like my mind projecting it, etc. So I started the, I would say I'm a bit psychic, or I used to be more, maybe, you know, I was into such things. I was, you know, reading auras of people still sometimes, you know, some people ask me, I can, but, you know, I'm more focusing right now on such things. So yes, I'm 100% into spirituality, so paranormal too, but, you know, I didn't have like experience of UFO or some kind of
Not yet.
or something.
Not yet.
Not yet, not yet, not yet.
Wow, that's interesting, man. Wow. So you're very open to the spiritual. I mean,
Yes.
dreams. I mean, we can go into dreams. Dreams. There's,
Oh.
I believe there's a lot more to dreams.
Yes. I have like 10 or 12 or something dream journals. I am not journaling right now my dreams, but I used to a lot, you know, heavily, like.
Wow.
So, and I have also, maybe on another conversation, I would say I know spiritual dreams, maybe semi-mystical dreams or something, crazy things that, you know, that I wouldn't say I believe in some kind of spiritual religion, you know. I know there is something, but I don't know what.
Absolutely, man. Yeah.
So the next time we can talk about dreams, spirituality, and maybe how our ancient ancestors have seen all of this, because there is also a common thread, not only the flood, in plenty of the oldest religions and philosophic systems of the ancients, both in India, Egypt, and more, that point to a single unified theory of everything. That I don't claim that I know, you know, this theory of everything, but we can see the big picture by analyzing ancient myths and comparing them with modern stuff.
Interesting, man. We've got to do that soon, brother. We've got to do that soon. That'd be amazing. Man, thank you so much. You've blown my mind tonight. Super interesting. Can you tell the listeners where they can find you and where they can get your awesome work?
Yes, you can find me on plenty of social media. I'm having a lot of actually appearances recently on podcasts such as yours. So just copy paste my name and surname. You will find me. I'm on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and so forth. My book is Déjà Vu, has everything already been. So you will find it in English. It's available on Amazon, but Amazon in plenty of regions like US, UK, Canada. I will send you some links so you can maybe include them in the description. Australia, Canada, and a few others, almost all, but I think India or Asia, not in 100% all, but you can find it there on Amazon, the English version. I highly recommend getting it. You were talking good things about it. It's actually, you know, because plenty of people, I started, you know, when I was starting doing podcasts a few years ago, and I was said, oh, I wrote my book at 17. So they said, oh, it's some teenage crap. And no, it isn't.
No,
it's like
not at all.
450 pages or something, bibliography, references, of course, footnotes, etc.
Oh, man, it's brilliant.
Thank you.
It's absolutely fantastic, and it's wild that you were 17 when you wrote that, because you know you wouldn't expect it. As I say,
Wait until you get into the last chapters about metaphysical stuff, cyclical time. So
let's go, brother. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you too.
We got to do this again very soon.
Epic.
We got to do this again very soon. Really appreciate your time, and yeah, just thank you so much for the great work you do. We need people like you, man, because that will ultimately lead us closer to the truth.
Let's hope so.
Man, guys, thank you so much for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, make sure you share it where you can. Make sure you get this book. It's absolutely fantastic. Déjà Vu has everything already been. It is awesome. I can't recommend it enough, guys. We'll be back very soon for more freaky conversations. In the meantime, stay safe and keep it freaky. Bye for now.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much, sir.